we are, page 90. As a natural being, man is divided into various races of men, each closely related to its geographical environment, having its original and physical mental characteristics by that environment. Race, once formed, is a type of humanity, which has permanent characteristics of its own, depending not on its environment, but on its own inbred peculiarities. As a plant form, one environment remains the same when trans. The sensuous and imaginative faculties thus genuinely base own conception of ideal life. This racially different humanity is once more a matrix. There arises a higher type of human organism, the historical organism, that is, race whose life develops time into higher and higher form. Favorite center in this historical life arises in favored center in which this historical life arises is Europe, owing to its geographical and climatic peculiarities. That in Europe alone, human life is just, whereas in India and China, or among the Native Americans, there was a process, but only a static, unchanging civilization or old forms of life are replaced by new forms without the steady cumulative development of historical process. Europe is thus a privileged region of human life, as man is privileged among the animals, among living organisms, and organisms among earthly existence. Herder's book contains a marvelous quantity of fertile and valuable thoughts. It is one of the richest and most stimulating books on the subject in existence, but the development of this thought is often loose and hasty. Herder was not a cautious thinker. He jumped to conclusions by analogical methods without testing them. Not critical of his own ideas. For instance, it is not really true that Europe is the only country that has a history, though doubtless it was the only country about which, in Herder's time, the Europeans had much historical knowledge. His doctrine of the differentiation of races, a crucial step in his argument, cannot be accepted without scrutiny. Herder, so far as I know, was the first thinker to recognize in a systematic way that there are differences in men, and that human nature is not uniform but diversified. He pointed out that this makes Chinese civilization what it is cannot be the geographic climate of China, only the peculiar nature of the Chinese. If different kinds of men are placed in the same environment, they will exploit the resources of that environment in different ways and thus create different kinds of civilization. The determining fact in history, therefore, is the special peculiarities not of man in general of this or that kind of, but of this or that kind of man. Special peculiarities are regarded as racial peculiarities. That is, the inherited psychological characteristics by the varieties of the human. Herder is thus the father of anthropology, meaning by that the science which A. distinguishes various physical types of human and B. studies the manners and customs of the various types as expressions of a psychological peculiarities going with the physical one. This was an important new step in the conception of human nature, because it recognized that human nature was not a datum, but a problem. Not something everywhere uniform, fundamental characteristics could be discovered once and for all, but something variable, whose special characteristics called for separate investigation in special cases. Even so, the conception was not a genuinely historical one. Psychological characteristics of each race were regarded as fixed and uniform. That instead of the Enlightenment's the microphone's all the way up here. Sorry. I hope the sound is better now. Sorry about that. Put this down here. Oop. Okay. Sorry about that. The psychological characteristics of each race were regarded as fixed and uniform, so that instead of the Enlightenment's conception of a single fixed human nature, we now have the conception of several fixed human natures. Each of these is regarded not as an historical product, but as a presupposition of history. There is still no conception of a people's character as having been made what it is by that people's historical experience. On the contrary, its historical experience is regarded as a mere result of its fixed character. At the present time, we have seen enough evil consequences of this theory to be on our guard against it. The racial theory of civilization has ceased to be scientifically respectable. Today, we only know it as a sophistical excuse for national pride and national hatred. The idea that there is a European race whose peculiar virtues render it fit to dominate the rest of the world, or an English race whose innate qualities make an imperialism a duty, or a Nordic race whose predominance in America was necessary condition of the American greatness, and whose purity in Germany is indisputed to the purity of German culture, we know to be scientifically baseless and politically disastrous. We know that physical anthropology and cultural anthropology are different studies, and we find it difficult to see how anyone can have confused them. Consequently, we are not inclined to be grateful to Herder for having started such a pernicious doctrine. It would be possible to defend him by arguing that his theory of racial differences does not in itself give any ground for believing in the superiority of one race over the other. One might argue that it only implies each type of man to have its own form of life, its own conception of happiness, and its own rhythm of historical development. On this showing, the social institutions and political forms of different peoples can differ without being intrinsically better or worse than one another. And the goodness of a certain political form is never an absolute goodness, but only a goodness relative to the people that has created it. But this would not be a legitimate interpretation of Herder's thought. It is essential to his whole point of view that the differences between social and political institutions of different races are derived not from the historical experience of each race, but from the innate psychological peculiarities. And this is fatal to a true understanding of history. The differentiations between different cultures, which can be explained on these lines, are not historical differentiations, like that between, say, medieval and Renaissance culture, but non-historical differentiations like that between community of bees and community of ants, Human nature has been divided up, but is still human nature. Still nature and not mind. And in terms of practical politics, this means that the task of creating or improving a culture is assimilated to that of creating or improving a breed of domestic animals. Once Herder's theories of race is accepted, there is no escaping the Nazi marriage laws. The problem which Herder bequeathed to his successors, therefore, was the problem of thinking out clearly the distinctions between nature and man. Nature as a blind process or some process governed by the laws which are blindly obeyed, man as a process or sum of processes governed, as Kant was to put it, not by law simply, but by consciousness of law. It had to be shown that history is a process of this second type. That is to say, the life of man is an historical life because it is a mental or spiritual life. Subsection 3, Kant. We've also been reading. Great book. Herder's first volume was published in the spring of 1784, when he was 40. Kant, whose pupil he had been, evidently read the book as soon as it appeared, and though he dissented from many of its doctrines, as his somewhat acid review was to show a year later, it did stimulate him to think for himself about the problems to raise and write an essay of his own, which constitute his chief work on the philosophy of history. Influenced by his pupil though he was, Kant was already 60 when he read the first part of The Ideon, and his mind had been formed by the Enlightenment as it took root in Germany under the aegis of Frederick the Great and of Voltaire, whom Frederick brought into the Prussian court. Hence Kant represents, as compared with Herder, a stringent tendency towards anti-romanticism. In the true style of the Enlightenment, he regards past history as a spectacle of human irrationality and looks forward to a utopia of rational life. What is really remarkable in him is the way in which he combines the Enlightenment point of view with Romanticist. Very much as in his theory of knowledge, he combines rationalism and empiricism. The essay to which I have referred was published in November 1784, and it is called An Idea for a Universal History from the Cosmopolitan Point of View. Idea der zu einer allgemeinen Geschlecht in Weltbürgerlicher Abich. And my German is horrible, pardon me. Historical study was not one of Kant's main interest, but his exceptional power of picking up the threads of a philosophical discussion, even on the subject of which he knew comparatively little, enabled him to develop lines of thought which he found in writers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Herder, and produced something new and valuable. Just as his study of Baumgarten enabled him to write a most important work on aesthetics, although his artistic culture was of the slightest. Kant begins his essay by saying that although as noumena, or as things in themselves, human acts are determined by moral laws, yet as phenomena, from the point of view of the spectator, they are determined according to the natural laws as the effect of causes. History, narrating the course of human actions, deals with them as phenomena, and therefore sees them as subject to natural laws. To detect these laws is certainly difficult, but not impossible. But it is at any rate worth considering whether the general course of history may not show a development in mankind similar to that which biology reveals in a single individual. Here Kant is using the Romanticist idea of the education of mankind not as a dogma or accepted principle, but as what he calls in his own technical language an idea. That is, a guiding principle of interpretation in the light of which we look at the facts in order to see whether it improves our understanding of them. As an example of what he means, he points out that every marriage in itself, as it actually happens, is a perfectly free moral act on the part of certain persons, but marriage statistics actually show surprising uniformity. From the historian's point of view, therefore, the statistics can be looked at as if there were some cause determining under a law of nature how many marriages there shall be in each year. Just as the statistician deals with these free acts as if they were thus determined, so the historian may look at human history as if it were a process determined in the same way according to a law. If so, what kind of law would this be? It would certainly not be due to a human wisdom, or if we review human history, we find it on the whole not a record of human wisdom, but far more a record of human folly, vanity, and wickedness. Even philosophers, Kant observes, wise though they are believed to be, are not wise enough to plan out their own lives and live according to the rules that they have made for themselves. Thus, there is a general progress in the life of mankind. That progress is certainly not due to a plan made for his own guidance by man, but nonetheless there might be such a plan, namely a plan of nature, which man fulfills without understanding it. I've been talking about this for a while. To detect such a plan in human history would be a proper task for a new Kepler, and to explain its necessity would require another Newton. Kant does not say what he means by a plan of nature. In order to interpret the phrase, we must turn to a second half of the Critique of Judgment. I still have to read that one, in which the conception of teleology in nature is expounded. Here we find that according to Kant, the idea of nature has purposes is an idea which we cannot indeed prove or disprove by scientific inquiry, but it is an idea without which we cannot understand nature at all. We do not actually believe in the way in which we believe a scientific law, but we adopt it as a point of view, admittedly a subjective point of view, from which it is not only possible but profitable. and not only profitable but necessary to look at the facts of nature. A species of plants or animals looks to us as if it had been ingeniously designed to maintain itself individually by nutrition and self-defense and collectively by reproduction. For example, we see a hedgehog, when frightened, roll itself into a prickly ball. We do not think this is due to the individual's cleverness on this particular hedgehog. All hedgehogs do it, and do it by nature. It is as if nature had endowed the hedgehog with a particular defense mechanism in order to protect it against carnivorous enemies. It is called a defense mechanism. In calling it a defense mechanism, we are using the language of metaphor. For a mechanism means a device, and a device implies an inventor. But Kant's point is that without using metaphors of this type, we cannot talk or think about nature at all. Likewise, he maintains, we cannot think about history without using similar teleological metaphors. We use phrases like the conquest of the Mediterranean world by Rome, but actually what we mean by Rome is only this and that individual Roman, and what we mean by the conquest of the Mediterranean world is only the sum of this and that individual piece of warfare or administration which these men carried out. None of them actually said, I am playing my part in a great movement, the conquest of the Mediterranean world by Rome. But they acted as if they did say that. And we, in looking at history of their actions, find these actions can be envisaged as if they were controlled by a purpose to achieve that conquest, which, as it certainly was not the purpose of this or that individual Roman, we metaphorically describe as the purpose of nature. It may further be observed that from Kant's point of view, it was just as legitimate to talk about a plan of nature revealed in the phenomena studied by the historian as it was to talk about laws of nature to the scientist. What laws of nature are to the science, plans of nature are to the historian. What the scientist describes himself as discovering laws of nature, he does not mean that there is a legislator called nature. And what he means by that is that phenomena shows a regularity and orderliness which not only can be, but must be described in some such metaphor. Similarly, I can't pronounce. When the historian speaks of a plan of nature developing itself in history, he does not mean that there is an actual mind called nature which consciously makes a plan to be carried out in history. What he means is that history proceeds as if there were such a mind. Nevertheless, this parallelism between plan of nature and law of nature has implications which betray a serious weakness in Kant's philosophy of history. We must have seen that the 18th century philosophers in general misrepresented mind by assimilating it to nature. In particular, they talked about human nature as if it were merely one special kind of nature, when what they were really talking about was mind or something radically different from nature. Kant attempted to avoid this area by his distinction based on Leibniz between phenomena and things in themselves. He thought that what makes nature nature, what gives it the peculiarities by which we recognize it as nature, is the fact of its being phenomenon. That is, the fact of it being looked at from outside, from the point of view of a spectator. If we could get inside the phenomena and relive their inner life in our own minds, the natural characteristics would, he thought, disappear. We should now be apprehending them as things in themselves, and in so doing, we should discover that their inner reality is mind. Everything is really and in itself mind. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is phenomenally, or seen from the spectator's point of view, nature. Thus, human action, as we experience it in our own inner life, is mind. That is to say, free self-determining moral activity. But human action, as seen from outside, as the historian sees it, is just as much nature as anything is, and for the same reason, namely, because it is being looked at and thus converted into phenomenon. Granted this principle, Kant is certainly justified in calling the plan of history a plan of nature, for the parallelism between the laws of nature in science and the plans of nature in history is complete. But the principle itself is open to grave doubts because it distorts both science and history. A. It distorts science because it implies that behind the phenomena of nature, as studied by the scientist, there is a reality, and nature as it is in itself, which is nothing else than mind. And this is the foundation that the mystical view of nature, so prevalent in the 18th century and early 19th century, which instead of treating natural phenomena as things deserving of study for their own sake, treated them as a kind of veil of concealing a spiritual reality of somehow akin to ourselves. B. It distorts history because it implies that the historian is a mere spectator in the events he describes. This implication is explicitly avowed in Hume in his essay on the study of history. To see all the human race from the beginning of time pass, as it were, in review before us, what spectacle can be imagined so magnificent, so various, so interesting? This view of history took Kant for granted, and for him it could only have one meaning. If history is a spectacle, it is a phenomenon. If a phenomenon, it is nature, because nature, for Kant, is an epistemological term and means things seen as spectacle. Some of these words are hard to say. No doubt, Kant was only adopting a commonplace in his age. Nevertheless, he was wrong, because history is not a spectacle. The events of history do not pass in review before the historian. They have finished happening before he begins thinking about them. He has to recreate them inside his own mind, reenacting them for himself. So much of the experience of men who took part in them he wishes to understand. It is because the 18th century did not know this, but falsely regarded history as a spectacle, that it reduced history to nature, subordinating the historical process to laws of geography and climatology, as in Montesquieu, or in the laws of human biology, as in Herder. Kant's parallel between the laws of nature and the plan of nature thus has its roots in the erroneous view of history characteristic of his age. And yet, by a special conception of what planned nature was, he took an important step towards overcoming this error. His own ethical work was avowed, in his own sense of the word, metaphysical in character. And that is, it was an attempt to discuss mind not in its phenomenal aspect as a kind of nature, but as a thing in itself. And here he identified the essence of mind as freedom. That is, in his own sense of the word freedom, not as mere liberty of choice, but as autonomy, the power to make laws for oneself. This enabled him to put forward a new interpretation of the idea of history as the education of the human race. For him, it meant the development of humanity into the state of being fully minded, that is, fully free. The plan of nature in history was therefore understood by Kant as a plan for the development of human freedom. In the first section of his Fundamental Principles of the Metaphysic of Morals, he asks, what is the purpose of nature in endowing men with reason? He answers, it cannot be to make man happy. It can only be to give him the power of becoming a moral agent. The purpose of nature in creating man is therefore the development of moral freedom, and the course of human history can therefore be conceived as the working out of this development. It is thus Kant's analysis of human nature as essentially moral nature or freedom that gives him the final key to his concept of history. We can now return to the summary of Kant's argument. Nature's purpose in creating any of her creatures is, of course, the existence of that creature, the realization of its essence. The teleology of nature is an internal teleology, not an external. She does not make grass to feed cows and cows to feed men. She makes grass in order that there should be grass, and so on. Man's essence is his own reason. Therefore, she makes men in order that they should be rational. Now it is a peculiarity of reason that it cannot be completely developed in the lifetime of a single individual. No one, for example, can invent the whole of mathematics out of his own head. He has to profit by the work already done by others. Man is an animal that has the peculiar faculty of profiting by the experience of others. And he has this faculty because he is rational. For reason is a kind of experience in which this is possible. If what you want is food, the fact that another cow has eaten a certain blade of grass only prevents you from eating that blade. But if what you want is knowledge, the fact that Pythagoras has discovered the theorem about the square on the hypotenuse gives that piece of knowledge to you more easily than you could have gotten it for yourself. Consequently, the purpose of nature for the development of man's reason is a purpose that can be fully realized only in the history of the human race and not in the individual life. Kant has here achieved a remarkable feat of showing that there should be such a thing as history. It is, he shows, because a man is a rational being, and the full development of his potentialities therefore requires an historical process. It is an argument parallel to that by which Plato shows in his second book of the Republic why there must be a community, as against the sophist who held that the state is artificial. Plato showed that it was natural because it was based on the fact that the individual man is not self-independent. He needs economic services of others in order to satisfy his own desires. As an economic being, he must have a state in order to live in. Similarly, Kant shows, as a rational being, he must have an historical process to live in. History, then, is a progress towards rationality, which is at the same time an advance in rationality. This, of course, was by Kant's time a commonplace both of enlightenment and romantic thought. We must be careful not to confuse it with the apparent similar but really very different late 19th century identification of history with progress. The evolutionary metaphysics of the late 19th century held that all time processes were such progressive in nature, and that history is a progress merely because it is a sequence of events in time. Thus, the progressiveness of history was by these thinkers merely one case of evolution or the progressiveness of nature, but the 18th century regarded nature as unprogressive, and the thought of progressiveness of history as something differentiated history from nature. There might even, it was thought, be a human society in which there was no progress in rationality. This would be a society without a history, like the non-historical or merely natural sciences societies of bees or ants. Outside the state of nature, however, Kant thought that there was progress, and he therefore asked, why does human society progress instead of stagnating? How does this progress come about? The question is an urgent one because he thinks that a non-historical or stagnant society would be the happiest kind, one in which people live in a peaceable and friendly and easy style, as in the state of nature depicted by Locke, where men order their actions and dispose of their possessions and persons as they think fit, and within the bounds of the laws of nature. And a state also of equality, wherein the power and jurisdiction is reciprocal, no one having more than one another. Because every man has an equal right to punish the transgressions of the laws of nature, thereby to preserve the innocent and restrain offenders. As Locke freely admits, there are no inconveniences in a state of nature arising from the fact that there is a man there, the fact that there every man is a judge in his own cause, or as Kant puts it, such a state in which all men allow their talents to rust unused is not one that can be regarded as morally desirable. Possible though it is, and in many ways attractive, indeed, neither Locke nor Kant nor I think anyone else of their age regarded the state of nature as only an abstract possibility, still less as a downright fiction. And that's all for today's reading. That was R.G. Part 10 of R.G. Collingwood's Idea of History. Fascinating book. We are up to page 100 now. Or wait. Yeah, we're up to page 100. So we are a third through the book. We'll probably get this finished in a month. Yeah, how's everybody doing? Oh, my day's going pretty. Oh, so if you're listening to the audiobook, you can. I'm just gonna talk to chat. Skip to the next video. Cash and Basil talking. Oh, I'm glad that you liked hearing my voice. Yeah, I just do that a little bit in the morning to practice. Kind of get me going for the day, and then I like to read. If anybody here wants to talk about philosophy or anything, I can do that. Or discuss what we read today. The Cash is on. I don't know who else is on. Probably get going in a bit if no one. Session point. I got 2 people in the chat today, or not even on the chat, just watching. So I think that'll be it for today, because I do have stuff to do. Oh, infinite universes? Well, problem is when it's a weird kind of combination of terms when people talk about the multiverse or the or infinite universes, because to me the term universe means everything. It's supposed to like encompass all physicality. So I kind of like don't know. I don't think there is more than one universe. I think that there are infinite. No, there's still a fine. Okay, so how to speak of this conception. Just like how you can have an asymptote in math, where you're constantly approaching the line, but you're getting closer and closer and closer and closer, where you never actually touch the line, and you can infinitely have the distance between it without ever touching it, but it's still confined within the space of that line. So like you could have a circle of concentric rings, like the first one is half of the space, and then half and half. You just keep on dividing in half, but you never exceed the ring, the final ring. That's kind of what the universe is like. But within that, those rings are just different, I guess you could say, pathways of time, where time splits off in different directions. It doesn't split off. It's hard to speak about this stuff because it's in metaphors, and when talking about time and universes, we have to think about things that are beyond the 3-dimensional, beyond length, width, depth, what we can normally perceive with our eyes. The existence. Okay. The existence is, since the black hole exists. So my from what little I know about black holes, very 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 little. I am not a mathematician nor a scientist. They think that there might be one at the middle and the center of the universe, a massive black hole that turns everything around. But even then, what is a black hole but something that a point of where gravity, I guess, which reaches almost infinite density. I'm 30, Mohammed. Remember correctly, and that's why gravity is like inescapable, because it's a point of like intense density or whatever, where space is. I don't see things as I'm speaking out of my ass because I don't know this type of shit. Like, I love discussing it, but I am not an expert. I would love to talk to some experts. I have more questions than I have answers. I have my own ideas. So the way I think of time, though, as get a pencil or a pen or something. What is Unk status? Because like I've seen Unk before. I don't know what that means. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you like my singing. Um, so let's think of what we normally perceive of life is a straight line. This is what we perceive. Oh, you can't even see it on the camera. Out of the. Here we go. But in reality, so this is going to be really weird, and I'm badly going to explain this. Because I've thought about this stuff. I've never tried to actually talk about it with anybody. Let me think about this for a second. Okay. So, imagine this is one universe, one timeline. Here we have the dimension of time itself. This is the axis of time. So with that, you just have the one universe, or the perceived universe as we have it. But in reality, there's that universe, and then there is that version of time, and then there's one that's right next to it. It's almost identical. And then another one that's slightly different. This is the dimension of time. So just like how with space you can have a dimension is something that is kind of perpendicular to it. So you have length, and you got width, and then you'll have, you can see it on here. Freaking sun is blocking my my ability to do this. Okay, and then you have, say, depth. Those are three perpendicular lines, or perpendicular on a 2D plane, or as far as I can get. Or they're, in reality, they're orthogonal. They, I don't know how to really speak in this without using words that I have a hard time defining. But just like how those things are juxtaposed, so is our own universe. Those three dimensions, imagine those as being these lines. And then each of those being perpendicular to time. Basically, this is a really bad example. This is only my own idea. I am not a smart person. This is just my own concept. I can't even fucking see it on here. Here we go. But imagine these as being different world lines. I don't know if you can cross over to them, but I think everything in here is predetermined because of physical causes and just the nature of the universe and consequences. So there is an almost infinite timeline. Maybe. It could be infinite, but it's the dimension of time itself is like having a universe next to another universe. It's all the same universe, but instead of there being multiple universes, there are merely multiple ways of that universe being expressed in time. What the fuck are you doing? Alright, my cat's chewing on something. Yeah, and that's just a really bad way to explain my conception. Oh, I'm glad you like him, Yanish. Where is Basil, anyways? Infinite dimensions in math. Yes, is it impossible for humans to cross over? Agreed, and crossing over the other universes. The universes don't have distances by centimeters or something like that. But like time, yes. So it would. I have a hard time talking about this because I have a hard time putting something into visuals that is not a visual thing and it's beyond language. Like I don't know how to really explain it. My idea, at least. But yeah, that's my idea of time. Oops. I think would actually, if you're really interested in that type of stuff, check out Steins Gate. It's actually got pretty interesting concepts in there. But another way of looking at it is that every so anytime something multiple choices, or if there is choices at all, this whole idea is based on the see you later, man. I hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great day. If there are choices and there are multiple world lines like that, every choice that you make splits you off into a different world line or timeline. Still in the same universe, but you're in a different space of time. I don't know really how else to explain it, but also at the same time, I kind of think that all these things are crystallized. Like, there is necessarily this shape. Every single decision that has been made, or can be made, has been made, will be made. Every single possibility has been, already is. Everything is one kind of crystal form, and consciousness itself is an illusion that we have agency over the flow of the universe, rather than the spectator. The phenomena of our own ability to understand what's going on is merely an artifact of the universe doing its thing. So that's why I have a hard time with the whole concept of free will. Because from a scientific point of view, it doesn't make any sense. It's not what we observe. As much as people talk about how much free will they have, they keep on the same habits. They keep, repeating the same things. People say that they can change, and they do, but that change was still, it wouldn't have been there without some sort of stimulation to tell them to change. Because as far as I can tell, everything we do is a reaction to either our inner state or outer state. The outer circumstances, the environment that we're in, or the inner environment that we have created. Actually, we didn't create it. It is created by the biology of our mind and the environment. We think that we have control over our own inner environment, but you can also get an earworm stuck in your head for 2 days. You can hear the same song over and over and over. Are you really in control of your mind? We can't even meditate usually. It takes a lot of effort to sit and just think one thought. So that's why I have a hard time with this whole concept of free will, because it typically shows that a person hasn't actually thought it through. They haven't really thought about their own actions and the actions of other people with honesty. A lot of times we will make conclusions merely because we desire the feeling of autonomy, the feeling that we're in control. We are the determiner of our own lives. And that also sells a lot, especially on, like, if, buy my course on how to, live your best life and live a free life and escape the matrix. You can't. The matrix is humanity itself. The human mind is what creates the matrix. Once you learn that, then you can realize the matrix isn't fucking real. And then you can escape it, because it's like, oh, I don't have to obey the laws of this weird society stuff. I only have to do it as much as it helps people and if it harms someone, don't do that. If it helps someone, do that. But if you're doing it merely because of the social stimuli of, oh, I'm doing this because it's just what we have always done, then I don't know. I really don't know. You're stuck in the matrix, and that's what a lot of people do. I'm not part of the matrix. I'm working really hard to get out of the matrix, but by doing that, you are reinforcing your position in the matrix by becoming a hard worker, by becoming someone who achieves wealth, by going after the goals of the matrix itself.
I think it's hilarious of how many people have been duped by Andrew Tate. It's hilarious, but it's also extremely sad to see the manosphere be kind of overtaken by these idiots merely because of their bravado. Because he's like, you know what, I could beat the shit out of anyone. It's like, yeah, who gives a fuck? You're still a retard. Pardon that. That was really uncalled for. I just got heated there. Something I grew up with a lot, hearing a lot as a kid, and I got used to using it as an insult. I shouldn't insult people, but there are people that are doing tons of harm, and Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan, the manosphere types, these guys that promote this, you're not a man unless you do this stuff, they're doing a lot more harm than they are good, because first of all, they don't understand psychology or human nature at all. They only understand that they like something and they like the way it feels, and they like to have the self-superiority over someone. This is something I did want to talk about that probably no one's watching anymore, but there is a huge emphasis on pride in America. And they confuse it and conflate it with self-esteem. Self-esteem is loving yourself, being able to accept yourself and not be hard on yourself, and knowing that, you know, you're no better nor no worse than other people. You shouldn't put yourself down, but you shouldn't also put yourself too high. That's self-esteem. Pride is the thinking of self-superiority based on characteristics of yourself. So pride, you could be about something good, because you could be prideful because of how many people you help. Yeah, it's a good thing you're helping people, but now you think that you're superior over other people because of what you do. Fuck you. Pride is a horrible thing that people do. It creates haughtiness, it creates snobbery, it pulls people apart, because no one wants to be with someone that's arrogant. No one wants to be with someone that's prideful. No one wants to be with someone who thinks that they are better than the other person. That's why humility is all about not self-deprecation. That is also bad. Be like, oh, I'm just such an idiot. Poor me. No, you're not. You're just a human. Humility is knowing who you are, where you're at in your skill level, and knowing that you could do different, you could maybe do better, you could maybe do worse. Your superiority, you're not superior to someone based on your actions or your self-worth or the things that you have in yourself. And that's why pride is so bad, because a lot of people, they go to college, they become educated, they come out thinking they know a lot. And yes, you do know a lot, but that doesn't make you better than the farmer who hasn't gone to college. Actually, they might know a lot more than you because they have experience in the fields. But because of your arrogance, when the college trained kid tries to help the farmer won't want that person's help because that person's an asshole. And therefore, the communication breaks down, and no one is benefited. The college kid doesn't learn from the experience of the farmer, and the farmer doesn't learn from the new scientific things that have, been taught to the college kid. Both people are just, frickin'. The farmer is prideful because of his own experience and thinks he knows better, and the college kid the same. But if they both realized we're just humans that need to learn more, and we're always encountering things at different angles, then we could, maybe work together, have better lives. But instead, because of the promotion of pride in America, especially in our media, to be proud of yourself means to think that, oh, I'm better because of this. I'm better than other people because I do this. Or the racist version of it is, I'm better than other people because of the color of my skin or the way that I look. And that's also the same thing with people that are good looking. A lot of them become prideful because, oh, they have a characteristic of themselves that eventually will go away that they don't really think about. But they think, I am better than other people. I am proud of who I am because I'm good looking, because of something I didn't change, choose, or do anything about. But I'm better than other people. Or it could be something that you earned. I was born poor, and I made $1 billion. Therefore, I'm better than you, and you should listen to what I have to say. No, intelligence. That's not how things transfer over. Intelligence in one area does not transfer over to another area necessarily, and that's why I hate the culture of pride that we have in America. It's harmful. It creates what's the word that I'm looking for? I guess you could say discommunity, a disconnection. It makes people assholes, but I see a lot of it online. People that are promoting, you need to be a Sigma male. You need to be proud of where you are. You need to take confidence in yourself. It's like, dude, that's not what confidence is. Confidence is just being aware of what you can do and what you can't do. Alienate. Thank you, Aditya. By the way, hello. Sorry, I got on a rant and I'm just like, ooh. And yeah, I said some unsavory stuff earlier. I apologize for that. I do not mean to disparage anybody with any type of disability. Growing up in the early 2000s, I have that said to me a lot, and it worked its way into my psyche. I'm trying to work it out and get rid of it. So Aditya, we just finished doing the book reading. Just been talking on different things that I was feeling. Talked about time and the universe a little bit. I badly explained badly talked about my own ideas. But yeah, that's essentially what's going on right now. There's just, it's frustrating to be someone who can see 5 moves down the road while everybody else is just looking one move or one. I can see 2 miles down the road while everybody's looking at their feet. And it makes me sad that there aren't more people that are trying to look further, because most people just want to look at what they're putting their next step instead of seeing where their next step leads to. And that is just something that's going to happen slowly over time. Humanity eventually will kind of wake up to itself. That's why I like kind of like reading the history of the idea of history by R.G. Collingwood. It kind of talks about this. Aw, thank you, Yanish. I'm glad that you love him. I'm glad that someone even gets anything out of this. I'm hoping that someone has an awesome day, can understand the world a little bit better, and have some more patience for other people with this stuff. Because as much as we like to tell people control yourself, or you need to behave better, or I don't think people actually are in control of themselves. I don't think I'm in control of myself, honestly. I think that we just rationalize our behavior afterwards. We like to think we're in control because it makes us feel better. On that we are like, oh, we know what's going on, but we don't. We really don't. We only have a slight perception. Most of what we have is a misapprehension of the universe. Oh, I'm glad that your mom and dad get to watch my videos too. But yeah, one of these days I really want to talk to someone. Would love to do a discussion on religion. Maybe yeah, probably this Wednesday we'll do another DJ Philosophia stream. I'll just play some chill tunes and we'll talk about religion, metaphysics, and philosophy. Maybe talk about the virtues. Oh, by the way, so if you are interested in the whole idea of morality as it is, I think it would be a great start to go on YouTube and check out a breakdown of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, if that's how it's even pronounced. Or just look up Aristotle's Ethics and watch a breakdown of that. You could read the book if you're already kind of into this type of subject. The way he speaks is a little weird, and so it kind of takes a little getting used to. It depends on also the translation. But, yeah. I would say check that out if you're interested in morality and virtue. I think he has some really great points on that. Am I going to do another stream tomorrow? Yes, I do a stream pretty much every day of the week in the mornings. It's literally I'm just practicing guitar like I would with no one around. I just turn on the thing because I want to be able to share it with people and say hi and talk to people because it kind of feels a little lonely. just kind of playing by myself. And then I like to just do the reading streams and talk philosophy afterwards. But usually around now, I kind of got to get going to do chores and then get ready for work. But yeah, that's my rant for today. Unless anybody has any questions, any points of discussion. I want to say, like, do you have any questions? Like I'm some sort of freaking, like, I don't know, guru. I don't have any special knowledge. I just know stuff that other people know already. All my knowledge is either through my own experience, which other people can also have those experiences, or what's that other one? I lost train of thought. Anyways. Oh, I'm glad that you love my songs. I feel like my voice needs a lot more work. I've only been like really trying to learn how to sing and doing like, exercises and doing like I've sang every single day of my life, but out of tune. But only recently have I tried to, kind of get better with being in tune and stuff. I have a cat. Shadow. Somewhere. I have a cat. Yeah. I think I'm probably gonna get going now. But I hope you all have a wonderful day. Any other books that I could recommend? Oh, by the way, if you want to talk to me more, about philosophy and if you like to talk about this type of subject, there is a Discord server in the I have a post on tab thing. Check it out. It's a Discord server for the Self Educators Book Club. Not really any action or anybody really in there, but like, if you want to be able to contact me, that's the way. So, peace out, y'all. Hope you have a blessed day. Also, smile at someone that you think doesn't deserve a smile today. Someone that really pisses you off, smile at them. Think about they don't know what they're doing. Give them some grace. They're just experiencing life and reacting to their environment. Don't let them hurt you, but also don't be too harsh on them. Have an awesome day.